Trying to change people. This is a losing game. Now, it's one thing if someone is asking for some advice, they're asking for help. You've kicked a habit, they have the same habit. They want to know, how did you kick the habit? How can I do the same thing? That's one thing. Your volition to change them in that case, or help them change, is solicited. It's a whole different story when it's unsolicited. And when the desire to change, the desire for someone else to change, is primarily coming from you. Now it's a projection. Now it is a pretty destructive behavior. And look, I get it. I understand that wanting people to change is oftentimes grounded in empathy. Maybe you see that they're not living in a way that is going to fulfill their potential. Maybe you see that they have a bunch of destructive behaviors and they could be doing better for themselves. But if you try to change them before they actually want to start to change themselves, you're just going to create strain in the relationship that you have with this person. And you might even create more of a barrier for them to change into a better version of themselves. And I'll explain why. If I'm a person who has a bunch of destructive behaviors and I don't really care to change, I don't really see a problem with them yet, perhaps down the road, I would have recognized through my firsthand experience that, oh, this is something that is not really serving me. Maybe drinking a couple beers every night is actually a pretty bad habit. Maybe all this time I spend on my phone, it's actually pretty bad. It's actually eating away a lot of my valuable time. I would argue that if you now tell me you should stop drinking so much, you should stop spending so much time on your phone, I'm now going to have more resistance to that idea if I didn't actually have any desire to change those behaviors in the first place. Now you might be thinking, hey, but what if I told you should stop drinking all that beer and you should stop spending so much time on your phone, and you recognized, oh, you know what, you're probably right. Okay, fair. That can happen. So maybe unsolicited advice once, maybe twice is okay. Just to plant a seed, plant what you think is a healthy seed for someone, but it's not up to you to water that seed. This is when you create that resistance. If the individual wanted that seed to grow, they will water it themselves. It is a losing game to try and change someone. And I invite you to consider perhaps why you want them to change is actually not for their best interest. You tell yourself that. You might tell yourself, I want them to change because it's in their best interest. And hey, you know what? Maybe it actually is, but I invite you to consider that it's actually for you. Because you're not trying to change everyone. You're only trying to change people who are close to you and people who you care about. So the difference there is that you have a motive, you have an agenda, a self-motivation for this person to change in a selfish way. You want them to change for you. And that's why you don't accept them for who they are. You might hear this and dismiss this. Say, no, I want them to change for them. It's still for you. I promise you it's still for you if you really think about this. It's because it's what you think is best for them. And hey, like I said, maybe it's pretty grounded. I know I really, really feel like I have a grounded idea of what is best for people, but I'm not going to go project that onto everyone. I'm going to do my best to accept them for who they are. Now, if this is somebody who's really close to you and these are some behaviors that are pretty destructive, selfishly you want them to change because you're afraid that you're going to lose this person. You're not going to want to spend time with this person anymore if they don't change. Maybe it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Could be just a platonic friend too, but let's take the example of a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe they have some behaviors that you now recognize that you're like, oh, I can't have these behaviors in the person who I spend my life with. So I'm going to need them to change. Because the alternative is you're going to lose the relationship. It's a bit of a deal breaker for you. And honestly, if there is something that is a deal breaker for you in someone's character because it affects you, I think it is worth communicating. Because there's a fine line between not trying to change people and being able to have your own boundaries too. So if something in a relationship or a friendship is affecting you in a way where you're like, you know what, I'm not okay with this, you could invite change in an individual, and you could create a boundary that says, if this behavior is not different moving forward, then I don't want to spend time with you. I don't want to be your friend, or we're going to have to end a relationship. I don't want to spend my life with you and have children with you. That is what I would call inviting change. And you might be saying, oh, Evan, you're being full of shit now. That's just a play on words. I think the difference is in persistence. Naturally, we have attachments as humans. We are attached to relationships, and trying to save a relationship by trying to point out a behavior that you're not okay with, I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that's perfectly healthy, and I encourage that actually. I think that is setting a boundary. Now, the difference is that person actually going to change? Are they going to hear you on what you want to be different? And are they going to say, you know what, you're right, thank you for pointing that out. I see that is a character flaw in me, and I want that to change going forward. See how the difference there is that you invited change, and now they are going to take it upon themselves to shift a behavior and to make a change. You're not insisting and being persistent that, hey, this has to be different. This has to be different. Hey, there's that thing again. It has to be different. You're not trying to change someone by inviting change. You're just letting them know where your boundaries are, and it's up to them to either respect them or to not respect them. To either stop crossing that boundary that you just made, or they might say, hey, that's not something that I am willing to accommodate, in which case you should let go. You shouldn't try to persist and insist on changing that person and think to yourself, oh, well, I can change them. I would really advise you to just let go. So I think that's the difference there. Inviting change is synonymous with making a boundary and leaving the ball in that person's court to see what they want to do with that. Because you get to decide who's in your life. Ultimately, the people that you spend time with are going to affect you. So I don't think there's anything wrong with being selective about certain character traits and having certain boundaries. Like I said, I encourage that. What starts to really backfire is when you think to yourself, I can change this person, and you try to persist with efforts to change someone else. You can't change anyone, nor should you try. You could invite change and create boundaries, and you can even guide change and assist in some change in an individual if it is solicited, if that's something that they're wanting. A friend is asking for help with something. That's very different. So I really invite you to do a few things. Number one, accept people for who they are. However, that doesn't mean you can't do number two, establish boundaries if you see them to be necessary, if someone's behavior is affecting you. And number three, let go if that is the appropriate next step. But those are kind of in order of importance. Number one is accept someone for who they are. That doesn't mean you can't change the relationship or even end the relationship. I can accept someone for who they are. I can see a friend with a bunch of behaviors and think, look, I accept you for who you are. I don't want to have this energy of trying to change you. But if you don't stop being so selfish and inconsiderate, then I'm going to take a step back from this relationship. You can still accept them for who they are. You don't have to harbor any animosity towards an individual just because you stepped away from a relationship. And I think that's a sign of maturity, is if you're able to change the dynamics of a relationship, perhaps even end it completely, and still harbor respect for that individual. And maybe if you passed by them on the street, you'd, still wish them well, stop, say hello, and carry on with your day. So this is a bit of a trap that people can often fall into, especially when they first start off with personal development. They sort of feel like they're on a little bit of a high horse and they know what's best for everyone. I know like 5-6 years ago, that was definitely me. So avoid this trap, avoid this whole paradigm of trying to change someone. I know that it's grounded in empathy fundamentally, but it's also grounded in selfishness. And hey, being selfish sometimes is important, right? Like you're a self. The meaning of the word selfishness, like you're caring about yourself. Establish boundaries by all means, but don't go overboard trying to persist. And rather than inviting change, you're trying to like force it on someone, because that's a losing game. It's never going to work. That's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed it, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Be sure to give the video a like, as it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.